The cursor drifts from one movie poster to the next, a sea of familiar faces and bright colors. 25 minutes have passed since the person on the couch first lifted the remote. The screen refreshes with another row of suggestions, and the cycle continues without a decision. This isn't laziness, and it isn't a lack of interest. Why can having more choices make it harder to choose and leave us questioning the choice we finally make? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. More options should mean more freedom, and more freedom should feel like a gift. From streaming libraries to grocery aisles, modern life seems to promise happiness through endless variety. But spend an evening staring at that grid of never-ending titles, and a different picture emerges. The promise of abundance begins to feel heavy, even draining. Psychologists noticed something similar when they watched shoppers at a grocery store. In the study, one display offered 24 varieties of jam, while another offered only 6. Far more people stopped to sample the larger display, drawn by the sheer range. Yet when it came time to actually buy a jar, something surprising happened. Those who saw the small assortment were many times more likely to make a purchase. The shoppers who faced the big selection had been intrigued, but they were also paralyzed. This pattern has become known as the paradox of choice. It challenges the common belief that more options always improve our experience. Having many alternatives can trap us between competing possibilities. The very variety that attracts us can also drain the energy we need to commit. One reason lies in how the brain handles comparison. When you evaluate one option, your mind naturally begins to consider what you would give up by not choosing another. With 3 choices, that mental accounting feels manageable. With 30 choices, the number of possible trade-offs becomes overwhelming before you even begin. Cognitive scientists call this opportunity cost, the loss of the potential gains from the options you reject. A large set of options forces your brain to compute an invisible price tag for every rejected path. The more you calculate those imagined losses, the heavier the decision becomes. And because each alternative has some appealing feature, the sum of missed opportunities starts to feel impossibly large. Decision fatigue also sets in. Your mental energy is a limited resource, and every comparison draws from the same reservoir. After an hour of weighing movies, even small decisions like what to eat for dinner can feel exhausting. Return to the couch for a moment. That tired feeling isn't just frustration, it's the mental cost of running an internal comparison engine for far too long. But the number of choices alone doesn't tell the full story. 2 people can face the same screen and have completely different experiences. Research on decision-making has identified 2 broad styles that shape this moment. Some people approach a choice determined to find the absolute best option available. They scan every possibility, weigh attributes, and dread missing something better. Psychologists call this style maximizing. Maximizers often achieve objectively good outcomes, but they pay a steep emotional price. They report higher levels of regret, more dissatisfaction after a decision, and more second-guessing. Other people have a different internal rule. Stop as soon as you find something that meets your standards. This style is called satisficing, combining satisfy and suffice. Satisficers still have standards, but their goal is to clear a bar, not to find the single best option in existence. The crucial insight is that the problem isn't simply the number of options on the screen. It's the interaction between the size of the choice set and the mindset you bring to it. When a maximizer faces a massive library, the search for the best becomes a project that can swallow an entire evening. They mentally tally what each unchosen movie offers, and those imagined pleasures accumulate like an unpaid debt. Soon, even a very good film feels tinged with the loss of all the ones left unwatched. There's another layer that makes matters worse. Abundance raises your expectations. If you have only 5 cereals to pick from, a tasty bowl feels like a win. But when you compare among 100 cereals, you start to imagine a perfect combination that no real option can match. The actual experience has to compete with an idealized version you constructed during the search. Anticipated regret also begins to color the process before you commit. You start imagining how you'll feel if the other movie turns out to be better. Even after you press play, a small part of your attention might linger on the path not taken. The thought that you might have chosen wrong can reduce the enjoyment of what is right in front of you. All of this helps explain a bitter irony. More freedom can leave us less happy. The promise of endless choice was supposed to liberate us from limitation. But without any limits, the mind becomes exhausted by its own comparisons. Now think about the person on the couch again, still scrolling. They aren't failing to choose because they don't care about the evening. They care so much about making the most of it that they become trapped in evaluation mode. Each new poster represents not just a possibility, but also a potential mistake they are trying to avoid. This shows us something essential about the way we make difficult decisions. The weight of a choice often depends less on the object itself, and more on how we frame the act of choosing. When the goal is to find the very best, every option becomes a threat to that standard. When the goal is to find something that will be good enough, the pressure begins to lift. This dynamic extends far beyond movie night. Job searches, dating apps, retirement plans, and even vacation planning can trigger the same paralysis. When every alternative seems to offer a unique benefit, committing to one can feel like closing a door on a better life. The cost isn't just time lost to scrolling. It's the emotional residue of feeling that no matter what you pick, you probably made a mistake. And now we reach the core reversal. The exhaustion doesn't come from the number of options themselves. It comes from trying to hold every alternative in your mind and measure them against one another, all at once. Your brain wasn't designed to perform an infinite optimization calculation with incomplete information. The real burden is the idea that you must find the absolute best and that anything less is a failure. Once you accept that good enough is a valid destination, the weight of all those unchosen worlds begins to lift. Satisficing isn't settling in a weak sense. It's recognizing that perfect knowledge is impossible and that your time and emotional peace have value. This shift doesn't mean never comparing or never aiming high. It means deciding which choices deserve that level of rigor and which ones simply need to end so your life can continue. So what changes when the person on the couch tries this approach? They set a few simple criteria. A comedy under 2 hours with an actor they like. They give themselves a 10-minute limit and pick the first film that meets those points. The cursor moves to the play button and the room darkens around them. The question is no longer whether the movie is the greatest of all time. The question is whether the evening begins to feel like their own again, instead of belonging to the endless scroll. This approach works because it cuts into the source of the paralysis directly. You reduce the number of comparisons before your mental energy runs out. You convert an impossible goal into a manageable one, and you reclaim the time you would have spent analyzing. Research on well-being suggests that satisficers, on the whole, report greater happiness and less regret than maximizers. And for low-stakes decisions, practicing satisficing can train your brain to let go of the illusion of a perfect choice. This doesn't mean you should satisfice when choosing major medical treatments or important life commitments. But for the dozens of daily choices that don't reshape your future, the freedom to stop searching is a form of self-care. Once you notice how the invisible burden of comparison drains your satisfaction, you can choose to loosen its grip. The remote is still in your hand, and the screen still glows with 100 stories. But now you know that the real power isn't in finding the best story. It's in deciding that this one is enough right now to make the evening feel complete.